Welcome back to the Road to Great Health podcast, where we discuss natural solutions to today's worst health problems. I'm Dr. Kevin Lenderman from Dr. Kevin's Wellness Clinic in South Louisiana, and I am joined by Dr. Rob DeMartino from Superior Health Solutions in Vegas. Doc, it's number 26 today.
Is it really? Wow. Yeah, I guess it is. Time flies when you're having fun.
Crazy. We've done 25 of these already. And I'm really excited about Rob and I were talking about the subject matter for today, and we were batting around some ideas. And he sent me a text that he wanted to talk about the connection between childhood traumas and the rates of autoimmune disease. And I was instantly intrigued because I hadn't seen that research yet, but from just consulting people over the last 30 years, I've noticed a big connection between you're talking to an autoimmune patient and they mention something about a childhood trauma. So I knew there was some kind of connection there, but since we've had that conversation, I actually pulled that research and I was blown away.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It was the same thing. I came into this world and I started to treat patients and things like that. And my main thing was immune system disorders because that was the problem that my mom had. So that was where my focus kind of was when I moved into that space. But I knew all the science and I had a really good grasp of that, but I wasn't frankly prepared for all these stories that patients would tell me about all of these traumatic things to them that happened to them when they were kids. And especially, throughout their life, but especially when they were children. But the pattern becomes recognizable very quickly because it's the vast majority of the and then when you start asking questions like, was there anything traumatic? It's instant tears.
Yeah.
Right. And what gave me the idea even to do the podcast on that was, we're just trying to do more content and try to just get more of this information out there. And I made an Instagram reel on the same topic, and it blew up overnight where people were commenting, "Thank you so much. Thank you for making me feel heard. I appreciate you making this video. And this makes so much sense." And we didn't even really get into the science of it. We just called to the fact of there's a very real connection with these things. And you've probably heard me teach in seminars. Well, say I could teach you all the science. What I can't teach you is that part of it, and the fact that you have to hear some of these stories that go down, and they're upsetting, and it affects you as a doctor if you care at all. Right. Like it really affects you as a doctor. I mean, there was a time when I kept asking my wife, I'm like, where are our kids? Who are they with? Do we know who they are? Can I run background checks on their teachers? Right. Because it's just all encompassing. But the goal, obviously, is we want to talk about giving some real tangible things. Why does that happen? What's the science behind it? And then, of course, tangible things of like, hey, what can you do about it? It doesn't just mean, hey, this happened to you. It's a horrible thing. And then it leaves you in the lurk for the rest of your life.
Right. And so some of the research on this, I mean, there's several studies. I mean, one study I was reading from the CDC, and not that we're huge fans of the CDC by any means, but they looked at 17,000 patients, and the rates of childhood trauma causing autoimmune or leading to autoimmune was, I mean, it was double and triple. There's just crazy rates of increase of this stuff.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you absolutely will get that, but it does answer the question as to, hey, why did this happen? Right? Just because there's a childhood trauma doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get an autoimmune disease, but it makes you much more susceptible to potentially getting an autoimmune disease like that. And like I said, the rates are undeniable. Anybody who works in this space who asks those types of questions can tell you that that's true. And the science is pretty straightforward on why that happens. But the good part about it, because then people say, well, what do I do? Right? Because all the comments, and I read the comments, even though I probably shouldn't, because most of them are nasty, but a lot of them are really, really genuine and very, very nice. That one, most of them are genuine and nice. Some of the other ones aren't, but they'll put comments on it and say like, well, what do I do? Now I have to pay for this twice. Right? I had this trauma and now I'm paying for it again as an adult with all this illness. And that was the goal of it, is really, I don't want people to feel stuck like that. I don't like that helpless feeling of, hey, no, it traumatizes your immune system and it changes your immune system in this way. So if it does that, we have to now make it this way. That should have happened then. It didn't. That sucks. Now it has to happen this way. It doesn't make what happened right. It doesn't make what happened go away. But you can now leave. You can retrain this immune system in a different way. It's just the reason why it happened. But it doesn't mean you're stuck with that for the rest of your life. And actually, some of the cool research actually showed that could regenerate and change.
Right.
So it doesn't
Right.
mean you're stuck in it. And I just find, especially when you deal with autoimmune stuff, so many of them feel so helpless and they feel so
Right.
cornered and they feel like so like there's nothing I can do. Someone sent me a message that all I could do is be a keyboard warrior. It's not.
Right.
It's
Right.
not. But that's the goal of all of these is to try to get that science out.
Yeah, and one of the other things I wanted to make really clear too about us bringing up this subject, because so many of these patients are told by the medical field it's just in your head.
Mhm.
And that is in no way what we are trying to present to you that we are saying has happened here. And so this is a real physical reaction that your body is doing, and it can be retrained to do something different. You know, and I tell patients this all the time. This fight or flight reflex it's a reflex. It is no different than when I hit your knee with a reflex hammer and your leg kicks. Okay? You could think about your leg not kicking, it's kicking. You could meditate about it. You could go to counseling about it. You could see a psychologist about it. And not that we're disparaging that in any way, but this is a physical reflex that your body is doing. And we need to retrain that reflex to do something different. And I think that's kind of the big point we wanted to lead with is this doesn't mean this is in your head, it's in your body and it's in your nervous system.
Oh, it causes a very physical, measurable change. Right. And that's what we're looking at here, too. That trauma is no different than a physical trauma, like a fall or something like that. It causes a physical change inside the body, but that physical change can be something that can be retrained to be in a healthier state where you're not in fight or flight. You because remember, our human nervous systems are designed for protection, right? Their goal is not anything else except survive, right? And as a child, especially, that needs to be really set in stone. And if that's you're in survival mode from that point on, then your body assumes, okay, this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to be forever, right?
Yeah.
Sat with
Well,
patients
let's
yesterday, it was the same story.
yeah, let's get into the mechanism here on this, doc. So, I guess we start with the nervous system, and then we can work through the genetics and the gut and all of the different systems in your body that get affected by this. But yes, just start us off on some of the mechanisms that happens in the body.
Okay, so actually, those are all the big known ones, and I want to talk about probably the most forgotten organ inside of the human body, and that's your thymus. So
Yeah.
your thymus is a little organ. It's about the size of a big strawberry when it gets to full maturity, and it sits right by your heart. And your thymus's job is basically to train and get your immune system ready for what it has to do. So when we're children, our thymus is really active. So when we talk about immune system, and we're going to talk about specific immune cells today called T cells. T cells are made in your bone marrow, and then they are shipped over to your thymus where they are matured. And that's why we call them T cells. The T stands for thymus. And they are matured to do all the different things that we need to do. So we have different types of T cells. You have T helper cells. They're the ones that basically they're like managers, right? They kind of figure out what needs to happen and where everything needs to go. You have T killer cells, right? So they do what they sound like. They kill, right? They kill bad cells, they kill cancer cells, they kill infections, right? We have T regulator cells. They're like your peacemakers, right? They're the ones saying, "Hey, we won the battle. The infection is dead or the cancer cell is gone. Call off the troops." They're the generals that say pull the troops out of battle, right? And then we have T memory cells, and their job is to remember saying, "Oh, I fought you before. You're strep." Right? So now they
Yeah.
remember what that is. So all of these T cells have to mature in your thymus. But the reality of it is your thymus is only active until you hit puberty. And then its function drops wildly off a cliff. So what that means is your immune system is completely set, say before the age of 13. So that means when you're 65 years old and you have to fight COVID or whatever, you are trusting white blood cells that got trained 50 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? That's it. That's the time that they train and they work. So your thymus is fascinating because it does stuff that no other body does. It takes billions and billions of genetic combinations and tries them out and works them together. It'll make up to like a quintillion, again, huge numbers that you can't really fathom, amounts of combinations. And 98% of your T cells that go to your thymus fail and get killed out. Only 2% of the T cells that get to your thymus actually graduate. And they say, okay, you graduated the police force. You are capable of going out there and protecting and serving. 2%. That's it. Right. So all of that has to go out there and all of that has to work. So now at this point, through this time frame, your body has different specific proteins. Think of proteins like insulin. Think of proteins like thyroglobulin, right? We see that for thyroid antibodies all the time. Every single specific protein to the body gets presented to T cells in your thymus. Your thymus cells actually shows all of your T cells, all the different parts of your body. And it tests it, says, can you tell that this is us? If you can't, it gets rid of that T cell. It fails. It does not graduate school. If it can, then it can graduate, but we know it won't be able to attack the body. Now, at first, 70% of them will fail the first test where it won't be able to tell if it's you or if it's not you. All of this ability to tell what's you, what's not you, be able to tell what your system is, what's not your system, what's an infection, what's not an infection. All of that gets set before puberty. Once your hormones go up, your thymus function drops like a stone. So when we hit puberty, we go through that hormonal change that drops like a stone. So that's why lots of other times where we teach in the courses, we always talk about if you see someone got sick after a huge hormone change, right? Puberty, a pregnancy, menopause, it's because that hormone shift has a huge effect on the way your immune system gets trained to be able to find all of these things. So this is a really interesting gene. It's called the AIRE gene, AIRE. But that's the one. It teaches your T cells to recognize every single organ inside of your body. Your thyroid, your pancreas, your liver, your retina, your lungs, your skin. Every single one of them, it presents almost like a miniature molecular version of your body. It presents it to it all the way through your childhood, right? And it basically tells it, don't attack. It's almost like if you think of it from a perspective of like I hire a security guard for my practice, right? I don't know why I would do that, but if I did, and you take them through all the rooms, like, okay, this is the waiting room. This is what it should look like. This is the treatment area. This is my office. This is who should be in here. This is who should not be in here. Your immune system cells have to train on all of that. And this is where, again, it gets a little bit dicey because if all of that is happening in that early point of life, and now say we have a childhood trauma that happens in that point, what most people will know is cortisol, which is the stress hormone. If cortisol goes up, the thymus goes down and thymus activity goes down. So now all that happens is what's the relationship? And again, I'm oversimplifying here, but in childhood trauma, now basically what ends up happening is as all of these cells are going through training to know how to fight, be good at fighting, have strong immune capacity, know what's you and what's not you, when to react, when not to react, they lose all of that training time. Because once that cortisol goes up and we go into fight or flight, which that will always happen together, right? Cortisol goes up, we go into fight or flight. Yeah. Those two things will always happen together. Immediately the thymus function drops like a stone. So now we're in a situation where we're not training these immune system cells properly. Now, that doesn't mean that they just go rogue on their own. There has to be something else that causes them to react. But then why do some people react and they just kill the infection and they move on? And why does some people's system react and they can't kill the infection and then they're chronically ill for the rest of their life? There's a really good chance that thymus did not work the way it was supposed to and get that training time between, 0 and 13 years old-ish, around when puberty hits. And if you do that, you are going to get a reaction that is incorrect. Now, can those thymus cells be retrained? Yes, we'll get to that. So now I want to throw that in there right now because I don't like the people being like, oh, well, I'm screwed. Yeah. I'm screwed. Like this happened to me. I'm screwed. It's not. But that is the physical reaction that will cause that. And I don't think it gets talked about nearly enough because the thymus is like, well, forget it. By the time you hit 65, 85% of your thymus is fat. It's
Yeah.
gone. Like it's fat. But it can come back. They proved that. They proved that in 2019. It can come back. Right? And they did it in a human model. That wasn't even animal models, where it can actually come back. And those T cells can be regenerated and they can be retrained just later on in life. This can be done. It's been proven. And we do it every single day in our practices, whether we talk about it on this level or not. But I think it's important to have the understanding and the visualization of the picture of, hey, they just didn't get trained right. Let's do it now. And if you do it now, you get all the benefits just from this point forward.
That is absolutely fascinating. I mean, I've heard you talk a little bit about the thymus gland, but that was usually around the discussion of vaccines, which is a whole different podcast. But
Different
you know,
podcast, yeah.
yeah. But the
Maybe that's another one,
thymus,
yeah.
right? Yeah. But I mean, think about it. You know, your thymus has to during those really crucial single digit 7, 8, 9, 10 years, really needs to be programmed correctly so that you can fight off things. And you've heard people say, well, I have a weak immune system or I have a strong immune system. That this could be really a huge part of it then.
Yeah, it's how did it train to fight? Right? Like I have no training as a fighter, right? But if I
Yeah.
trained since I was a child in martial arts, I would be a much better fighter when I got older,
Right.
right? It's just the training that has to go on. And part of the ideologies of vaccines is if you turn the immune system on, the immune system at that point is not meant to be turned on. And especially at a very, very young age, right? Before 7, not really before 3, before 7, you turn that immune system on. Now, all of a sudden, your thymus can get confused, and we lose a concept of what they call central tolerance, where as it's trying to train your T cells properly of saying, hey, this is us and not us, you got a third party that's coming in and saying, no, it's not, that's not us, that's not us. And then then your body doesn't know which one is right, right? Because
Wow.
it's not
And,
meant to do that.
and then at the same time, you have the gut brain axis to
Of course.
where, and you go into fight or flight. Now, not only are you messing up all the training of these T cells, but now, your gut shuts down because of this same fight or flight response. I mean, this response changes your entire physiology.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and again, I still think it's such a fascinating ideology that we are running with what we make, no matter what age we are, you are running with the crew that you made at a young age,
Yeah.
right? And the trauma doesn't have to be consistent. I'm not saying you have to be under trauma from 0 to 13, but when you're
Right.
young and impressionable like that, and you are proven to your nervous system that you are not safe, it's going to err on the side that you're not safe, and it's going to stay like that.
Yeah.
And again, as a child, it's hard to reboot that because you don't have the tools, right? Your body doesn't have the tools, your body doesn't have what it needs in order to be able to reboot that. So most of the patients who come in with these kind of ideologies, it's one of the reasons that in our testing protocol, we always look at the nervous system as, are they in fight or flight?
Yeah.
Because if they are, we have to get their body to feel that it's in a safe place before you can start saying, because your body's not going to be calm and chill and saying, I have to kill everything in my path at the same time, right?
Right.
These are illogical things to kind of go together. But then the flip side of it is you see so many people talk about, well, you just have to do nervous system restoration. Well, no, because if you go back to the previous podcast, if your mitochondria are damaging and those cells are sending out danger signals, it's not going to calm down.
Right.
Right? If someone's chasing you with a knife and someone came into that room and they start trying to chase you with a knife, and I'm like, oh, Kev, calm down.
Yeah.
What do you mean,
Calm
baby?
down.
Stop.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah.
Your body's not going to calm down. Right? You're like,
Right.
no, I can't. I'm going to get stabbed. Right? So I have to protect myself. Your immune system is not going to shut off. If it perceives that those mitochondria are damaged and it looks at it like bacteria or viruses and it's attacking it, it's not going to calm down because you tell it to calm down. But it is going to be much more sensitive, your immune system, to react to something it looks like a pathogen. Now, whether that's a pathogen from the outside or a pathogen from your cells damaging, if they're not trained correctly, they're not going to handle it right. They're just not going to handle it right. So there's a more propensity to have this problem, but you still have to have something that triggers your immune system to react. It's just, am I sending in really well-trained troops? Or am I sending in a bunch of 16-year-olds that don't know what they're doing?
Right. Right. And so, when we talk about the fight or flight system of the nervous system, what Dr. Rob is talking about is your nervous system has two halves. You have a calm side where we're supposed to live, where you digest your food, you make hormones, you sleep, you have energy, everything happy and healthy happens during that calm side. That's called parasympathetic. And then a predator attacks us, we go into sympathetic fight or flight, and then we're supposed to go back. And what we find is our patients are stuck in this fight or flight loop, and they have very little parasympathetic activity, and their nervous system is completely locked in sympathetic activity. And in a case like what we're talking about today, they may have been like that since single digit ages. Your nervous system may have been stuck in fight or flight, sometimes for years, and you can't heal like that. We could be the best doctors in the world, and if your nervous system can't go into that healing mode, your body's not going to go into healing mode. And so the way your nervous system is balanced is really critical to understanding that first step.
Yeah, and if I get a lot of my patients tell me like, "Doc, I'm the anomaly. I confuse all the doctors. They give me
Yeah.
stuff. They say, well, that should have helped you, but it didn't." But it's exactly what Dr. Kevin's talking about, because if your nervous system can't go into healing mode, if we try to push it into healing mode, you'll either have no reaction or you'll have a negative reaction to that, because your immune system, because your nervous system is going to bounce back and say, it's very nice that you want to be calm, but I'm going to fight in my life over here.
Right.
And I am going to rebound back over to that way hard. So if you're one of those people listening to this and say, oh man, I'm the anomaly, you're not. It's just that your nervous system is stuck in that. So you have to make the system feel safe. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
is that dealing with emotional trauma? Is that dealing with some sort of pathogen? Is that dealing with mitochondrial damage? But guess what? Guess what else raises cortisol? Blue light. Guess what else raises
Okay.
cortisol? EMF.
Yeah.
Right? And your thymus gland and your pineal gland, which is the gland that's controlling a lot of your sleep regulations and melatonin, which we have a whole podcast about, they're connected to each other. So if your pineal gland goes bad, so does your thymus. If your thymus gland goes bad, so does your pineal gland. They are connected to each other. If they're both good, they're both good. One doesn't be good and the other one's bad. They go together. So it's not just emotional stress. And I don't want to just blame everything on that. But now when you start looking at the accumulative amounts of things that are happening to us and going down to this level, it's why you have to start having some sort of different ideology about how you start managing some of these problems, because most of the time it's not that these problems are, unfixable type of things. It's just the strategy of which we're using, or the belief structure that's ultimately around it. Right now we're in a situation where most doctors, they're pitching this whole idea of, hey, this is a chemical invasion. You're being chemically invaded by toxins or heavy metals or infections and things like that. But if your model is a chemical invasion, you're doing that so you could sell a chemical to fix it. Right? I mean, that's the reasoning why. But that's a defensive model where we're saying, hey, look, you're constantly under attack by these chemicals or infections or whatever it may be. So you have to constantly do these defensive mechanisms, the diet or the supplements or whatever it is, to constantly protect yourself. And that's not really my concept. My concept is defense is great, but offense is better. How do I make sure that my immune system is strong and regulated so I don't have that dysfunction from when I was a kid? I'm not playing defense. I change that. I'm on offense. Now my immune system works right, and I'm not a weak immune system person anymore. How do I make sure I don't do the things that damage me? And how do I do the right things to make sure my system stays strong so I don't worry about little things like that? Right? I don't worry about, oh, am I going to get a bacteria? I don't worry. That doesn't even occur to me.
Right.
Right. But that's offense, and that's control. Right.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the biggest thing about this, and it's the whole purpose of all this information, is how do you take control back with that? So anything that spikes your cortisol, even as a younger person, right? So now you see kids on screens
Mm-hmm.
all the time, right? They're under blue lights all the time. And especially this generation doesn't know, like our generation kind of was like the hybrid. We didn't have tech, and then we did kind of have tech like now. But like the younger generation, that's what they're kind of coming up in. But I really felt strongly that this emotional component doesn't get talked about enough. But you have to make the nervous system feel safe before you're able to actually rechange those things. So there is an order of operations here, right? If your mitochondria are damaging, your nervous system is never going to feel safe because it always feels like that's a pathogen that it has to attack. So you have to repair those things. Again, offense. What repairs that? Light, dark, magnetism, water, oxygen, all the things we talk about. But then, okay, now you can calm the nervous system down and now you can retrain the immune system. Guess what happens if you do those three things? But that doesn't,
Results.
but it doesn't come in a pill.
Right. Right.
I wish. I mean, again, we talk about it all the time, and our lives would be like drastically easier. But
Right.
the ideology is there is a pathway out of this. It's just where do people get stuck? And I'm frustrated watching, especially now that I've stepped more kind of into the limelight of these social media campaigns, and I'll put a lot of video stuffs out there, and get attacked, and doctors coming after me,
Yeah.
and all these different
Sure.
types of things, which is what it is. But at the end of the day, is kind of like, are the results there?
Right.
Right? Is the science there? No, it's not. It's really on our side, and that's why I never kind of mind doing it, because they had an eye doctor threaten to like repost all my videos and do all these different types of things, and then I wrote him a scientific response, and I didn't hear from him again. I wanted to
Yeah.
do it on his page. I'm like, you post it, let's do it on your page, because I want to have the scientific debate. Again, it's that ideology of this is there. These are fixable things.
Yeah, and patients with this are so frustrated because they go to their endocrinologist's office, they test their TSH and their T4 and their antibodies, and they're sent home with Synthroid or one of these really harsh infusion or immunosuppressive drugs, but nobody ever really goes deep enough to find out the traumas that they had, the damage they've had to their system, things they've been exposed to, molds, toxins, chemicals, pesticides, all those things, and then look at their mitochondrial health, see if that's damaged. Are you looking at light? Are you getting dark? Are you getting sun? And when we start going through all of that, it's almost like it's so complicated, to try to go through all that. But once you lay it out, it's really very linear, like you say.
And it is. And I want to make sure. So in 2019, they did a small human trial where they actually showed on MRI that the thymus can regenerate. And not only
Cool.
that, the new T cells actually production increased, right? So that happened, right? And it's a human trial, because like animal trials fail all the time. Human trials that happened, I will tell you, we see that same thing. We just see it in the, we're not looking at the imaging of the thymus, but we're actually looking at the actual levels of T cells inside the body. But it's one of those things, like you're talking about, when we start laying it out, it's just the different perspective and the different belief structure. But we're also beaten into this belief structure of, you're chemically messed up, or it's all in your head, or there's some sort of invader that's constantly in there. It's none of those things, right? And again, the proof is in the pudding that we don't get results with that when we do it that way, right?
Yeah.
But think of it this way. The big next thing in autoimmune is they want to do that CAR T cell therapy, which is basically where they give you all of these matured T cells. So what does that mean? They're literally telling you this is where the problem lies. So what do we do? I'm telling you, this is where the problem lies too. I'm telling you, this is what caused it, and this is how you can fix it. Because guess what? If I just dump a bunch of T cells into your body that your body has no idea, they're not trained by you, right? They're trained, but they're trained by somebody else. They're not trained by you. It's going to create confusion because your body's operating this way. Now all of a sudden you've got a bunch of generals that come in and do this. You're going to create a problem. At best, it's going to slow the problem. But guess what? If your mitochondria are still damaging and leaking, is it smart to tell your immune system to stop?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're going
Right.
to keep
Right. Right.
damaging, right? Like, so
Right.
guess what? When that wears off, you're going to have a bigger problem to deal with.
Right.
And
Right.
not for nothing, it's a $450,000 procedure. So of course that's why they want to do it, right?
Right.
But the point of it is they're telling you what the mechanism is. This is where we treat. When they do the biologics, what do those treat? They treat the inflammation that your mitochondria kick off when they're damaged. They're telling you in not so many words, this is where the problem lies. Just their chemical solutions to try to fix it isn't what gets it done.
Right.
So,
And
to point that out is frustrating, but
Very much so. One of the problems too is, in the traditional Western model, they go to their endocrinologist for their autoimmune, they go to their gastroenterologist for their GI, they go to their GP for their hormones, and nobody's looking at the whole picture. And so you've really got to look at the whole picture of why the human body has done this and what we can do to get it to do something better, to get it to fix, to get it to repair.
Yeah, because I mean that's what general was supposed to be, right? Look, I'm not
Right.
against specialty. Nobody knows everything about everything. Certainly not
Right.
me, right? So is not an idea about having specialists, but then eventually that has to lead to a big picture ideology, right? There has to be first order principles, central thesis. Every single human being on earth goes through this thymus T cell process. Every single one of us. Do you do it well or do you do it not well, right? And again, that might be out of your control, but you play the cards you're dealt. It is something that can change later on. That's the most important thing. Is this is all about power and control, and who you trust with that is a big deal.
Awesome. We'll leave it there. All right, Doc. This was fascinating. I learned a lot, and so thank you so much for sharing all that with me, guys. Thanks for joining us on podcast number 26. We'll have 27 next week. See you guys then.